Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
It's your episode, my friend.
It is my episode.
And yes, I did cut my own hair. No judgment.
I don't understand. Okay, listen.
It's normally fine, but I did it while drinking. So
it's never
it's
fine.
Not fine.
Like, first of all...
Don't tell Jesse.
My husband, exactly, literally went to school for months for this profession, and you think you can just go in your mirror when you're drunk and snip, snip? No!
Just
it
my
takes
bangs.
Months of training.
Just my bangs. If I had to go to a hairdresser to cut my bangs every time I needed them cut, I would be so poor. Are you kidding me?
You go out to eat. I see that.
That was a birthday dinner.
That was not the only time. Don't pretend. You go out to eat often.
I'd rather have seafood than cut my bangs. Yes, no, never super. We do take out once a week or go out whenever. Yeah, but anyways.
This is episode 71.
Yeah.
And it's my episode.
And
I'm excited. It is spooky.
So
but
you
first,
didn't want to see ghosts in your mirror? Come on.
No. No. Oh my God. Speaking of
ghosts
spooky,
in your mirror. Okay.
My dad's house is haunted. Big time.
Oh my God. What happened while you were gone?
They have cameras in like certain parts inside the house because they have teenagers, and like when they're not home they need to watch teenagers. And I have a recording.
No, I'm not ready.
Little voices
I'm
singing
scared.
Ring Around the Rosie.
No, you do not.
Yes, I do. I'm not going to play it in this episode because this is a very long episode for me already. Anyway,
I need
just
it.
so y'all know, this is a future thing we're going to discuss. I'm going to tell you why it's haunted. The house across the street from them is also haunted. I almost went in there, but I was too scared. Well, I'll talk about it either on a listener episode when I have my brother write in or on a bonus.
No,
or
I
something.
cannot wait that long. My eyes are already watering. I need to hear this.
Fucking scary.
No, we
can't do it.
Can you send it to me? Like
No.
for later?
No, because I need to see it as you hear it.
No, I'm already crying.
Okay. Anyway, do you have a fun fact?
I'm so mad at you right now. You shouldn't have told me. I want to hear it. Oh, but
Tell me a fun fact.
Because I knew today was going to be a spooky episode, I thought I would give a fun fact that was a little funny. So, in medieval France, a pig was dressed in human clothes, tried in court, and then sentenced to death for eating a child's face.
What?
They tried a pig.
Okay, I get that. But the pig ate a child's face?
Yeah, I was just going to skip over that part, but...
No. Oh my gosh.
I don't know why. Maybe the kid fell into a pen. There's no backstory for me here. I just thought it was funny that they went through all of that effort of trying the pig.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
That's gross.
They don't try pigs anymore. But that would be really funny on trending news. Trending tweets. Pig tried in court. The kid was okay. He didn't die.
The kid?
Yeah.
Okay,
the pig died.
I thought you said the pig was okay, he didn't die, and I was like...
No, the pig
that's
was
what you're worried about right now?
The pig was sentenced to death. No.
Sorry, but good.
Pig.
No.
She's doing what pigs do.
Eating faces?
They eat anything.
That's not okay.
No, I know. I feel bad for the kid, too.
So, I know that you have this fear, but do you know what the fear of clowns' name is?
No.
It is coulrophobia.
Ew, I don't even like
coulrophobia.
I don't even like the way that sounds.
Yeah, it's so weird because
is it like CH?
No, COUL. It looks like it's about to say cauldron. It's weird. But so it's from my quiz book, and it gives you all of these options, and obviously it's the only option that would make sense. Well, not make sense, but be realistic, because the other ones are clownophobia, way too easy. Circus phobia, way too easy.
Also way too easy.
Cosplay phobia, entertainer phobia, and comedia phobia. Who came up with these fake ones? Because
They're really bad at their job.
they're
They need
really bad.
Chris from Scary Stories We Tell to help him out. All right.
Well, anyway, those were very quick fun facts. Now let's get into some sangria.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It is delicious. So this week we went back to a cucumber mint sangria. We said we were going to do this for summer. It's not the exact one that we had before. I probably could have found the exact recipe. I think it's on our Instagram, but I just looked for one and found one. Of course,
You
we
switched
used
it up slightly.
our Robert Mondavi
Sauvignon Blanc.
with cucumbers, cucumbers, mint leaves, lime, and white grape juice. And the reason I chose this one is because it had white grape juice in it instead of like another alcohol. Like a lot of them that I found had like gin or vodka or this or that. And I wanted to use this one because for those of you who don't drink, you can make this drink with just the white grape juice, cucumbers, mint, and lime. So it's really good.
I didn't have fresh limes, so I used lime juice. But I also like muddled my grapes with the mint and the cucumber, and it turned out really good.
Yeah, I muddled my cucumber, mint, and lime, but I don't know why my stores are all out of white grapes, or green grapes. So
Well,
I didn't
you
have
got
any
the
grapes to put in
juice.
it.
It counts.
I did, yeah. That works for me.
Do what you can. Use what's in your fridge. Make it delicious. My mint is from my deck garden, so that's always fun in the
Nice.
summertime. I always feel fancy.
Yes.
What would
do
you
you
rate
rate
this?
it?
Oh, jinx. I would definitely, I don't know. This was like one of my favorites. I'm going to have to give it a 9.5.
I think I would give it a 9.5 too. It's so easy to drink. Like, especially because I think the last time we did it with a Pinot Grigio, and I specifically chose a different wine for this one to see the difference. And this is even better than last time, I think. It's so
I mean, it's
good.
been a year, so it's tough to say, but oh man.
Yeah, I think 9.5 for me.
Again, challenge to our twisted humans to send us a sangria recipe or a wine that you think will be a 10.
Yes. We are going to get right along into this haunted episode.
Hence the spooky.
After a quick little break to hear from Alternative Interests Podcast. All right, are you ready for this spooky story?
No, because you started me with crying already, or eyes
Well,
watering.
this isn't like... Okay, so this is the haunted topic. What I decided to do for the haunted topic, because I don't know what other topic it would fit in, is a very us topic that we just needed to talk about already.
Okay.
And that is the Salem Witch Trials.
Yes.
But as we know, Salem Witch Trials weren't actually that spooky. They were kind of just super depressing. Except I do have one little spooky part in here, so.
Okay, I'm so stoked. Also,
Let's
I hope
get
that these
into it.
true witches, who knows, they might have been innocent people, are haunting the shit out of the people that hurt them. That's where this connection comes from.
There you go. All right. So the Salem Witch Trials happened between 1692 and 1693 in the Massachusetts colony. At the time, what is currently Salem City, the city of Salem, was called Salem Town in the Massachusetts colony. But the Salem Witch Trials didn't happen in the town of Salem. They happened on the outskirts in what was known as Salem Village. Today, the location of Salem Village is actually not in the city of Salem. It's in the city of Danvers, Massachusetts.
Oh.
They renamed themselves quickly after the Salem Witch Trials for reasons that will become obvious. To understand how the trials got to the point that they did, though, we need a little backstory before we dig in. So first off, this happened during a time when the United States of America did not exist. There was land in what we now call the U.S. that was being colonized, but the land was fought for, claimed, and then, quote-unquote, belonged to the English. We all know that it was a shitty thing for people to do, but that's the history of it. It was normal for people to fight for land nearby and also be a little worried about people coming in and attempting to take the land they lived on. All around the Massachusetts area, people were still fighting over land. Wars were in progress between settlers and the natives. Settlers trying to take more land and the natives trying to take back theirs. Even the settlers were at war with each other as the French tried to colonize the same land that the English were trying to colonize.
Because white people suck.
This is, yes, duh. But also, just people sucked
they do.
back then. Wars everywhere all the time.
Why can't we just all live on the same giant piece of land in peace? God damn it.
Because somebody always wants something more. It's never enough. I was watching the
Rude.
Minimalist documentary today.
I love that documentary.
Many settlers, especially the children, were born into this life. It was all that they knew. They were born and raised in this house, on this land that their parents fought for, and people could come in the middle of the night and burn down towns and kill people. They were scared for the same exact reason that the natives were. And to make it worse, these religious Puritan settler adults truly believed in their faith that anyone who wasn't a Puritan was related to the devil. Catholics, the devil got to them. Quakers, definitely devil-worshipping witches. Natives, or French armies, sent after them by the devil. What the fuck is happening?
I don't know. That freaked me out. You can't say the devil that many times without something banging on your wall, apparently.
So when the very first accusation of a witch came about in February of 1692, there were probably many people who were scared to death and having nightmares about witches and the devil coming to get them. It was a real fear at the time. It's not like they were some ignorant people who were scared of something that didn't exist. This fear was real. They just called it something different than what it was because that's what they were taught to call it.
Yeah.
To get in the same mindset as they were in, think of the way people in certain towns are scared of tornadoes when the weather gets bad. There may not have been one in your area in a really long time, but the weather person tells you every storm that there's a possibility. During this time for them, the trusted person was the Reverend, and the Reverend was telling people all the time that there was a possibility the natives and the witches and the devil in disguise would come and take their town. And it was actually happening to other people in land farther out. So why wouldn't they believe that the devil was coming for them too? The Salem Village Reverend, Reverend Paris, is where the first accusations came from. His daughter and his niece, who was staying with him, had unexplained convulsions one night out of nowhere. And when Reverend Paris asked a doctor about it, the doctor said that he had heard of something similar before, and that it could possibly be them bewitched. It's unclear if Reverend Paris took this seriously or not at first, but his slave Tituba did. When Reverend Paris was away one day, Tituba tried a home remedy that she knew of from her homeland to cure the girls of the black magic. But the remedy didn't work. The convulsions continued. And when Reverend Paris found out that magic, even if it's just healing magic or a home remedy, was used on his children, he started to suspect a little more that maybe the doctor was right. Reverend Paris beat Tituba for bringing magic into his home and for putting it into his daughter and niece. They and their friend heard him beating Tituba over it, and so when he asked them about it, they didn't want to get in trouble, so they're like, yeah, it was Tituba that was a witch and was making them convulse. From there, things spiraled, and they blamed more and more people, maybe trying to get Tituba out of trouble, maybe trying to get people they didn't like into trouble, or maybe they were just having nightmares about other townspeople that they couldn't control, and this was the only way they could rationalize it. At one of the early trials, Tituba was questioned and said that she was just a slave, and she was only doing it because someone else had ordered her to. She was coached to say certain things to the judges she stood before, and she was very smart, listening to the way that they responded to the things that she said to them, watching their reactions, and she continued on with her story in ways that she thought would make them sympathize with her to keep herself out of trouble. She said that when she was forced to sign the devil's book, 9 other names were already written on it. And then she refused. She didn't actually do it. There were 9 names on there, though. And this is when the entire town began to look at every one of their neighbors with a suspecting eye, wondering who else had made a deal with the devil. Before we get into more names, though, let's go back to the land situation real quick. When the land was first colonized and claimed by the English, the people who got that land willed it down to their families, and them to theirs. It had been in the family, passed down from generation to generation since the very beginning. Which honestly wasn't that long, because they, just colonized. But still, people literally died for this land. Which, it's...
Better be
you can see my
freaking
eyeballs moving, because, good, but also... death isn't good. Anyway,
No,
it's a thing.
yeah.
It's a whole
It's
thing.
problematic. I getcha.
Back in England, there was a law that said that anyone who was put to death, or even put in jail for a long period of time, had to forfeit all of their land and property to the royal family. Even the living children of the deceased had no access to it, so they could end up homeless if a family or friend didn't take them in. The excuse for this law was that the king needed that person's land or property in order to repay the royal family for the food and housing while that person was in jail. So it's like their fines or their tax money. Here's the catch, though. Women didn't and couldn't own land if they were married. As soon as a woman was married, everything she owned was legally belonging to her husband. If her husband died not a criminal, then it was her land again. So there was women who had land because they were widows.
Gotcha.
There was women who committed crimes whose land wasn't taken away because it was the man's land now. But if the man was also convicted of the crime, or if the woman was a widow, then the land would be taken away.
I see.
When the New World was colonized, though, the colonizers did away with that law so that the land would be safe and forever in their family. During the witch trials, there was a new king, and he was trying to reimpose this land law. The governor of the Massachusetts colony was struggling with trying to find a way to keep the king from making him reimpose the law, or to find a way to explain to his people that it was a good idea. He literally left Massachusetts and went up towards Maine for a really long time because he didn't want to deal with it and he didn't know what he was going to do. And he was gone for almost the entire witch trials. They just didn't have a governor looking over them. So it's another reason why things got a little out of hand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why people say that the Salem Witch Trials happened. A lot of things that it gets blamed on. And we'll talk about some of those at the end. But one quote-unquote reason people point to is land disputes. And with this crazy law being imposed at the time, I'm sure things were escalated to a point that they probably wouldn't have been had the law not been floating around. For instance, there was a sheriff in Salem Village named George Corwin, and he definitely took advantage of the situation. Anytime someone was put to death, he would go to their home and steal some things for himself, knowing that the king doesn't know what's in there. So let me just take it before the king does. And if the families of those people wanted some of those things back that belonged to their deceased loved ones, he would sell it back to them. Oh yeah, sure, I'll give it to you and not tell the king if you give me some money.
Yeah, that's so wrong.
Police have always been shit.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's 1600s or 2022.
Yep. There is a little hint of truth to the land dispute reason, though, when you look at the very start of the finger pointing. And it is because of the way that Salem Village and Salem Town were at odds with each other. Salem Town was like the main place, like the city. It had the church and the court and the meeting hall. It made all the rules. The wealthy people living in Salem Town made their wealth, all over the world. In England, probably. Salem Village was kind of like the countryside of this city, sort of. People in Salem Village produced the goods and did all the hard work in the area. All of their wealth came from the area, so it was a bit more limited. They couldn't, expand on their wealth. They could only sell to the people who were there. And eventually, the people of Salem Village were getting really upset that they had to travel all the way to town to go to church or to town meetings. They wanted their own thing with their own church and their own rules and their own meeting hall. Eventually, they did get the church and the meeting hall, but there were still certain things that they weren't allowed to be recognized for because the wealthy families in the Salem town voted against it. Notably, the Porter family.
Ah.
And so the village people, specifically the most vocal family, the Putnams, were feeling some type of way about the townspeople. Dispute or rivalry between the Putnams and the Porters is a big thing that's talked about in, all of the books about the Salem Witch Trials.
Yeah.
Reverend Parris, we already know, was the reverend of the Salem Village Church that they finally got. And he was strongly supported by the Putnams, but not so much by the Porters. His daughter, Betty Parris, who was 9, by the way, his niece, Abigail Williams, who was 12, and their very close friend, Annie Putnam, who was 12, were the first 3 people to point fingers. And later, Annie Putnam's pregnant mother, Anne Putnam, who was 30, was also pointing fingers at witches.
Ay, ay, ay.
The Putnams were allegedly responsible for more than half of the witchcraft accusations.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah. Of course, they weren't the only ones making accusations, though. There was a bunch of people. A couple more that are famous is 18-year-old Elizabeth Hubbard, 17-year-old Mercy Lewis, and 17-year-old Mary Walcott. But the Parris girl, the Williams girl, and the 2 Putnams seem to be the most famous quote-unquote witch hunters during the trials. Even people from other towns whose children were sick would come to see these girls and ask them to identify who the witches were in their towns. It's like these girls could see ghosts and magic and knew what the devil was doing. Many times, their accusations included seeing the witches riding on broomsticks or stabbing somebody right in front of everyone else, but nobody could see it except for them, because the witches were allowing their spirits to go and do things. Only the girls could see it. Also, only these girls seemed to be affected by the witches in front of everyone else. So at trials, these girls would start having convulsions to further prove that the person on trial was indeed a witch. Again, though, others did also accuse people of witchcraft. Those others are just lesser known. People who were accused of witchcraft were usually people who fell into one of these categories. Their family member was already accused. They weren't Puritan. They tried to stick up for someone who was accused. They sympathized with the French or the natives. Or they were just socially awkward and people didn't like them. When the accused witches got to trial, there were certain things that were used to prove someone was a witch. One of those things is, like I just said a minute ago, when the great witch hunters would say that they were being attacked on trial. It's usually... Oh, I forgot to put this in here. I was feeling feisty. It usually went something like this. Witch, why did you hurt these people who accuse you? And they're like, not a witch. And then one of the girls falls to the ground screaming in pain, and the other one is like, she's doing it right now.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous.
But that's
people
what happened.
And they were actually terrified. Like, everyone watching were like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening right in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, what reason did these random little girls have to lie?
Exactly.
So, some of the other ways to prove that someone was a witch was if they touched the screaming girl on the ground and she stopped screaming. Witch. If they fucked up reciting the Lord's Prayer. Witch. If they had a mole. Witch. And the mole is actually a witch's mark, which is a secret nipple for nursing their familiar. It sounds so funny now.
I know.
Ugh.
Yeah, which one's your familiar, Frank or Stanley?
Neither. Fuck those. I have like a crow somewhere off in the world that's still trying to contact me.
And bring you shiny things.
Yeah. My dogs do not help me do magic. They just make me freaking hate everything. They're so needy. Oh my gosh.
So am I, so I can relate to that.
These accused witches could try to deny it and defend their innocence, but it was not likely that the jury would believe them. The best shot an accused witch had was blaming other witches for making them do it. And so now we're going to get into some of the people who were accused and why historians and sleuths believe these people were accused. Spoiler alert, it's not because they were a witch. Sarah Osborne was accused very early on by the Putnams. Sarah used to be married to a man with the last name Prince, whose sister was married to a Putnam. But when her husband died long ago, she kept the land they owned together, even though the Putnam man, as his brother-in-law, thought that he should have the land. Then, to top it off, Sarah Osborne got remarried to a young indentured servant, who she freed from servitude by paying his debt with her husband's money, or ex-husband's money. Widowed, deceased husband, late husband, that's the word I'm looking for. Late husband's money. To top it off, she was very sick right before she was accused and hadn't been to church in a long time because she was resting. The courts used this information and turned it into not coming to church because she began worshiping the devil. She was sent to jail to await her punishment, but sadly, due to that illness she had, she died in jail. A few others died in jail as well. Lydia Dustin, who was eventually exonerated, but didn't have anyone to pay her jail fines and get her out. Anne Foster, who confessed after her own daughter accused her of being a witch to try and save herself. And Roger Toothaker, who admittedly worked as a healer before it was considered a scary magical thing. He was just like holistic medicine dude. And they're like, magic, you witch. Yeah. Another accused witch was Sarah Wilds. She married her husband a few months after his late wife died, which made his late wife's family skeptical of him. His late wife related to the Putnams.
Surprise,
on top of
surprise.
that, right. On top of that, she had a reputation as a nonconformist instead of being Puritan, and she was recently charged with the scandalous crime of wearing a silk scarf. And the nail in the coffin for Sarah Wilds' reputation was that her husband, John Wilds, was the person who drew the property line between the Putnams and the Towns family. Towns as in that's their last name, not Salem Town.
Yeah.
But this is another family that the Putnams had beef with. Sarah Wild was found guilty of witchcraft and hanged. So let's talk about that Towns-Putnam beef real quick. The Putnams were probably the most wealthy family in Salem Village. I believe I said that earlier.
Yeah.
Their property touched Salem Town to one side and the Towns family property to the other side. So
they were literally two families divided.
They were literally in the middle of two families who were against them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. So the Towns family was really close to the Porters, who were in the town, And then, so it's Porters, Putnams, Towns. And Porters are like stuck in the middle and annoyed. There's a possibility that just being in relation to the Porters made the Towns family fall victim to accusations. Rebecca Nurse, maiden name Towns, was accused. Other than being a Towns, she was also disliked because she had adopted a Quaker child. Puritans did not like non-Puritans. But Rebecca was a Puritan, and she was a very important member of the church. But it was Salem Town Church where she became so important, not Salem Village Church. After she married, she moved to the village, a move that made other village people think that those dang town people were buying up all their land. And she was in her 70s when she was accused. In the 1600s, she was over 70 years old.
Wow.
At her trial, the jury first found her innocent because, like, who would accuse a 70-year-old Puritan?
Right.
But then the accusers the people, these little girls, asked her, how come another witch called you one of them? What did they mean by that? And Rebecca, being elderly and nearly deaf, was silent because she didn't even hear the question.
Oh my God.
And then everyone roared that her silence was a sign of guilt. She didn't know how to answer it. And the jury changed their mind. Rebecca Nurse was hanged.
No.
Rebecca's
She's
sister...
an innocent old lady. Let's leave her alone.
Rebecca's sister, Mara Esty, maiden name Towns, was also accused. She was able to talk her way out of it at trial, but just a few days later, the accusers said her spirit was visiting them and harming them again in their sleep. Mary was put in jail, and the accusers said that they were no longer being harmed when she's in jail. So Mary Esty was found guilty and hanged. Rebecca and Mary's other sister, Sarah Cloyce, maiden name Towns, was also accused and found guilty. But while awaiting her death warrant, a lot happened. And we'll get into that in a little bit. We have a few more innocent people that didn't make it through, such as Elizabeth Howe, who was Rebecca Nurse's sister-in-law. Susanna Martin, who was a poor widow who literally laughed at the girls who seemed to be faking fits and making accusations. George Burroughs, who was able to recite the Lord's Prayer, but was son-in-law to also accused irritable old woman Wilmot Red. George Jacob, who was accused by his granddaughter to save herself.
Oh.
She did save herself successfully, thank goodness.
Okay.
Mary Parker, who didn't know any of these people and said this was definitely a case of mistaken identity. Anne Pudiator, a midwife. Samuel Wardwell, who admitted to doing silly divination sometimes.
God forbid.
A widow named Margaret Scott, and a deputy named John Willard, who refused to arrest people he thought was innocent.
Oh.
All were hanged.
R.I.P.
Another person accused by the mean girls was Bridget Bishop. Bridget was seen often wearing exotic clothes and bright colors. Very devilish. She also owned 2 taverns where she let people drink and get crazy.
Oh my God. What
She
a
was
witch.
actually the very first person executed in the witch trials. Because of just that.
That's not a...
Another tavern owner accused was Elizabeth Proctor. She owned a lot of land that was all inherited. Tisk tisk. She was married to a man 20 years older than her. She was wife number 3. She allowed natives to drink at her tavern.
Oh,
And her
my
grandmother.
God.
And her grandmother was accused of being a witch many years before. Elizabeth Proctor was found guilty, but because she was pregnant, she couldn't be put to death yet. There was a a law in English, courts that you can plead your belly. And if you plead, I'm pregnant, they cannot kill you until you have
I was
the
like,
child.
excuse me?
Yeah. So she just sat in jail. Eventually, her husband, John Proctor, came to her aid and fussed about her being in those terrible conditions. And wouldn't you know it, then he was accused of being a witch. His fate was worse than Elizabeth's, and he was hanged.
Jesus.
Trying to stick up for his wife.
Rude.
One of
Not
the people
him,
who accused... What?
I said not him, them, just to clarify.
Duh.
You should always stick up for your wife.
One of the people who accused John Proctor was the servant he had hired named Mary Warren. Mary's sister had gone deaf, and both of her parents had died recently. She blamed these things on witchcraft and began pointing out anyone she suspected out of fear. I mean, I guess, like, if you lived in a town where, like, everyone's like, that person's a witch, and both of your parents die, your sister goes deaf, you'd probably be fucking terrified. Like, everybody's a witch, stay away from me,
Yeah, right? No kidding.
Well, so she became one of the people to accuse everybody. Another person that she accused was Martha Corey. Martha Corey was an extremely important member of the church, but she talked shit about how ridiculous the witch trials were. And also, she had a really shitty husband. Her husband was Giles Corey. No one liked him because he was your stereotypical grumpy old man who yelled when you stepped on his lawn. His land was very near the Proctor's land, and he hated that they let the natives drink at their tavern. He also once set their land on fire because he was mad at them. And the most horrific thing he did was he beat a servant kid who was most likely mentally handicapped so badly that he died a few days later.
Oh, no.
He was taken to trial over that, but since Giles Corey wasn't the only person to have beaten the servant recently, he was not arrested for murder because they didn't know who actually was to blame for the death.
That's so sad.
Like,
I was laughing at the, like, basically hissy fit, just so everybody's not like, wow, Alicia, you're a bitch.
No, yeah, he is a bad guy, but
he's also 5. You can't just, like, light somebody's land on fire for being mad at them.
He's a very immature, bad guy, but also he's not a fucking witch. Like, he's a bad dude. He should probably go to jail, but he shouldn't be hanged for being a witch. He was accused. So, first, Martha Corey was accused of witchcraft and sentenced to hang. And so her husband Giles got even more vocal about how fucking stupid it was.
Yeah.
Which, of course, got him accused.
Of course, because if you make a scene, you're a witch.
Yeah. But Giles Corey pleaded the 5th before pleading the 5th was a thing. They asked him all kinds of questions, and he was like, I am not talking to you. You're just stupid judges. You're all fucking crazy. So, to try to force him to talk, they tortured him. By laying him on the ground, putting a board on top of him, and placing heavy boulders on the board, one at a time, until he was writhing in pain.
That's the worst thing I've ever heard.
The judges asked one last time if he was going to to cooperate with them and tell them what they want to know about the witches, to which he spoke his last words, more weight.
Oh my god, that's kind of a badass, like, last
It
word,
is.
though.
It
like,
is
if you're
such a stereotypical grumpy old man, too.
Yeah.
Fuck you, more weight.
Yeah.
Like, nope. Giles Corey died under that weight on September 19th, and his wife, Martha Corey, hanged 3 days later on September 22nd.
Oh. AKA Sierra's birthday.
There was one more important person who I haven't mentioned yet who was also hanged. She was actually one of the first accused and hanged, but I had to save what I thought was the best part of the story for last, and that is the story of Sarah Good. Sarah Good was a poor woman, but she was also just, like, socially awkward because she had a really shitty life, and that's probably why she was accused.
Yeah.
She had
I'm also socially awkward.
Exactly. So. That's why I love her. She had 2 brothers and 6 sisters. Her father was a wealthy tavern owner until he completed suicide when she was 16 years old. The land that they had to be split between all of them, except when their mother got remarried, he got to keep the 7 daughters' land. Sarah wasn't able to offer much to any man who might want to marry her. Her first husband was an indentured servant who she married and paid his way to become no longer a servant. But then he died quickly after that, and so it left her in a ton of debt. I just saw something out of the corner of my eye that scared the shit out of me. Still, Sarah Good was able to find love, but even this husband was scared of her because of how confident and stubborn she was, which honestly was probably the same amount of confident and stubborn as any woman who just wanted some fucking rights. But this was the late 1600s, so that was scary to men.
Yep, me and Sierra would have been hanged.
Yeah. In all honesty, the reason why this story is my favorite is because Sarah Good is the only woman accused who I actually think may have been a witch. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that as an insult from me. That is 100% a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also don't mean that I actually think she was making these accusing girls sick and convulse. I just think she was a strong, independent woman. I think she was so strong in her goodness that people thought she was bad. When the Puritan Church was doing something that they said was good, but was really probably unethical, she challenged them. She's like, what are you doing? Why do you think that's okay?
Yeah. She was just us, but back then.
Exactly. But people disliked her because she was poor and she was a beggar and, she needed help from the community. She didn't have anything.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Ugh.
Sadly, Sarah's 5-year-old daughter, Dorothy, was also accused.
No.
And she was put in jail with her mother. And then, when Sarah's trial came, Dorothy admitted that her mother was a witch. So Sarah was hanged, and Dorothy sat in jail alone, never being tried, for 9 months before her poor father was finally able to save up enough money to pay her fees and get her out. Little 5-year-old girl.
Oh my God.
Fucking prison.
In not
in the
today's
1600s.
Prison. Yeah. Oh, that made me cry. Oh. That's
Sarah Good. I know. Sarah Good was hanged in the second round of hangings after Bridget Bishop's hanging. She was hanged alongside Rebecca Nurse, Rebecca Nurse's sister-in-law Elizabeth Howe, Susanna Martin, and Sarah Wilds. Sarah Good was the youngest of the group. There was a reverend there to speak to and pray with each of the women before they were executed. Mostly because all of those women, other than Sarah Good, were part of church.
Yeah, that...
Of the 5 women...
Yeah, they believe you're going to go to hell when you're... Well, I guess if you're murdered... It's not like you killed yourself, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, no.
The
he was,
is
praying with them,
I
hope you're okay
suicide
after this.
or complete suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of the 5 women, the Reverend seemed to think that Sarah Good was the most witchy, because instead of saying something like, together we ask God for forgiveness, he just said to her, just admit your crimes to us. Clear your conscience.
Fuck you, sir.
And she said back to him, quote, I'm no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take away my life, God will give you blood to drink. End quote.
Oh, goosebumps.
25 years later, on December 13th, 1717, that same reverend died of a hemorrhage, which caused his mouth to fill with blood, and he choked on it. She was a fucking witch.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's wrong. She didn't do anything. Fuck.
Nope. She's
And,
like, I'm manifesting
which-
it if it's the last thing I do. Fuck you.
Oh my god, that's insane. And like we know that witch trials didn't just happen in Salem. Like they happened all over
Oh,
the
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable to me how many innocent lives were taken because people just misunderstood
Because
them
who
or
knows
were
what,
scared
yeah.
of them or were bored.
Yeah, we'll get to it. After the hanging executions of 8 people, including Martha Corey, on September 22nd, 1692, things slowed way down. The more people who were being hanged, the less people there were in Salem Village that weren't affected by the trials. The jury couldn't be unbiased,
Yeah.
and people were becoming less scared of witches messing with those accusing little girls, and more scared of those accusing little girls accusing someone else they loved.
Yeah.
They spent months in fear of witches, locking away those fears or attempting to eliminate them, before they finally realized that they can't let their fears control them. Well, some did anyway. The governor was definitely one of them, though. He finally came back to Massachusetts and realized that there was a ridiculous mess of shit happening that needed to be chilled. Including the fact that some people were beginning to spread rumors about his wife possibly being a witch, because she had recently voiced her opinion in support of another accused witch. And also, she gave housing and sympathy to a native slave. So she's like a terrible human, right?
Yeah.
In 1692.
Obviously.
When the governor settled back into home, people were coming forward to him concerned about the trials, and more specifically about the evidence people used to prove that these people were witches. Specifically, it was spectral evidence that people worried about. Spectral meaning you can't fucking see it. It's imaginary, except for in a different realm of existence. Science was becoming a newly popular study around the world at this time. So, like, for the first time ever, mathematics and astronomy and architecture was popular, which is so weird to think because, like, that's normal life for us now.
Except
But
for
people
the
are like,
fucking math
whoa,
part.
maths!
Blech.
Oh, it's weird. Okay. So while many people were on the side of God and faith, many others were like, okay, but, like, we have to use common sense, too.
Yeah, we need to test what is being
Right.
told to us.
Right.
That's science. So weird.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't even know what science was. They're like, science? What? God
Yeah.
said.
You're a witch.
God said. And the governor had to decide if spectral evidence was going to be allowed in court. If it was, people would continue to accuse people and would continue to be hanged, possibly even his wife. If it wasn't, most of the hanged witches thus far died for no fucking reason. And it could backfire, and people might think he's also a witch trying to protect his wife.
What the fuck?
He had to take his time thinking about this, and he also took suggestions from important men around town. Puritan clergy, is it clergy or clergy? I think it's clergy.
Clergy. Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds right.
Puritan clergyman, writer, and supporter of the witch trials at the time, Cotton Mather, wrote a book called The Wonders of the Invisible World, which he used to explain why spectral evidence was important to these trials and how easily the devil can manipulate people.
Ay.
Cotton Mather's own father, though, Increase Mather, disagreed, siding with science. He wrote his own book called Cases of Consciousness Concerning Evil Spirits. He was basically trying to say that accusers could easily be lying. Like, fucking duh.
Yeah. Most
also-
people fucking are. Come on.
Yeah,
Like,
they're fucking liars.
they don't
No.
know.
But also, not only could they be lying about that person is a witch, they themselves could be possessed by the devil and blaming good people just to get them killed. Like, if you think that person's a witch, who's to say the accuser's not the witch, blaming good people? Many others eventually agreed with Increase Mather, signed his paper in agreement, and the governor did away with spectral evidence. From there, things started to get really lax with the witch trials. People who were in jail started escaping, most likely because the jailers were, letting them out and probably, being bribed by their family, hey, here's a couple bucks, can you let my wife out? Sure, I don't care.
So amazing what money, even today, what power that has
definitely.
over people.
But
All
in
of
the
a sudden,
beginning,
oh, you're not a witch? Okay.
right. Well, in the beginning, it was probably scarier. They actually believed in witches. Now they're like, oh, wait, science. So, yeah, give me some money. I don't care. Also, people started petitioning to the governor to allow the accused witches to await trial from home. And the governor allowed it. It's like, yeah, sure. He also sent all of the miners home as well. Someone accused a man in Boston of witchcraft, and that man had the person arrested for defamation instead of he himself being arrested for being a witch. So, things were on the flip side now.
Mm-hmm.
The governor also hired a new judge to be added to the superior courts, a judge named Thomas Danforth, who was a man of science and who would not let the religion get in the way of his decision-making. He was a judge for the remaining trials alongside Judge William Stoughton, who was strongly on the other side of things, on the side of religion. He was all for the witch trials. He wanted to continue. He was upset when spectral evidence wasn't allowed, but he was like, I can get the rest of these witches. I know it. But the governor purposely hired the guy of science to be like, let's even this out a little bit. In January of 1983, after all these new things were set into place, the trials of the previously accused started up again. Trial after trial, cases and charges kept getting dismissed due to not having any evidence other than the spectral evidence, which was no longer allowed. There were about 50 people left to try at this time. More than half of the cases were dismissed, and the rest were all acquitted or found not guilty, other than 3 who were found guilty of witchcraft. All 3 of them likely had mental disabilities.
Who's shocked?
These 3, along with 5 others who were previously found guilty and just awaiting execution, including the not pregnant anymore Elizabeth Proctor, and Sarah Cloyce, who was the sister of Rebecca Nurse and Mary Essie, were now given their death warrant and set to be hanged. However, right before the execution date, Bible-thumping Puritan Judge William Stoughton was at the meeting hall with all the other judges and the governor, just talking about stuff. The governor yelled at his servant in a fit of anger, and Judge Stoughton stuck up for the servant. Don't yell at him. He didn't do anything.
Right.
The governor got so pissed off at this dumb Bible-thumping Puritan Judge Stoughton, and in a weird flex, he pardoned all 8 of the witches who were set to be hanged. He's like, fuck you. None of your witches are being hanged now.
I kind of love that flex, though.
Judge Stoughton cried like a baby. Not really, but he did quit, and he never came back. He, left town.
Fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants you anyway, Judge Stoughton. And
That's
with
awesome.
that, the witch trials were over. In total, a population of about 500 people, almost 200 were accused, 20 were executed, 5 died in the terrible jail conditions.
Oh my God.
And many others were never the same after their jail stays.
That makes my
Reverend
heart sad.
Paris was fired by the people of Salem town, and a new reverend was put into position at Salem Village Church, one who pushed everyone towards forgiveness, even having the warring families who accused each other to sit next to each other in church.
Oh, I kind of like that move.
Yes. By 1706, little accusing mean girl Annie Putnam had become a very important member of church and wrote a full apology to anyone she accused at the time, stating that she now believes they all were innocent. And slowly but surely, families started receiving restitution from the government for wrongly executing their family members. And then they changed the name of their town to Danvers.
It's not nearly as cool of a name, though.
There's still Salem, but the Salem that we know is Salem Town. Salem Village was where some shit happened. That's Danvers now.
Yeah, and Sierra and I will absolutely be visiting one day.
Definitely. Also, I found that if you go to, hang on, it's in my sources. By the way, most of my information came from Aaron Mankey, who is an amazing podcaster. He has a whole podcast, like, different from lore, called Unobscured. And season 1 is all about the Salem Witch Trials. And
I love lore.
There's a whole bunch of interviews.
Oh, cool.
Like, if you go to the bottom, I think there's like 10 episodes, and then if you go to the bottom, it's just interview after interview after interview of historians who
I didn't know he had a second podcast.
Oh, he has like 12 podcasts. He has his own podcast network. I also watched an episode of America Fact versus Fiction, which is where I found out about the Sarah Good curse, and what inspired me to do this episode was Sarah Good's curse. Like,
I love
that bit made me do all of this research.
Name of the episode.
Yes. And then salemwitchmuseum.com. You can do a virtual tour of every historic stop in the city of Salem now. It's super cool. So we should totally do that.
Yes.
For the end of this episode, I wanted to talk about some of the reasons why this happened. And I didn't do a whole bunch of notes on this.
But it's still cool to talk about.
Know it in my head. Yeah. So one of the main reasons I remember seeing all the time, other than the land disputes, which, yeah, I'm sure that was kind of like the reason for some of it, but definitely not all of it. Like, not all of it. Sarah Good didn't even fucking own any land. Like,
yeah,
she was just a fucking person.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like to blame ergot poisoning. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I remember. That's what I thought. Poisoning. Yeah, so I guess, hang on, let me see. Ergot poisoning, so basically they thought that there was like a mold over all of the wheat in the town.
Okay.
And this mold made people convulse and made people crazy and made people think that there were witches and blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
But historians looked into this, and ergot poisoning mostly doesn't give you convulsions, which is what all these girls were having. It only gives you convulsions if you have a vitamin A deficiency. And Salem is a seaport community. The ocean is right there. And fish has a whole bunch of vitamin A. So they were all eating fish. They did not have vitamin A deficiency, which means they did not convulse from this, which means if they did have ergot poisoning, the only thing that would happen is that they would get gangrene. And that doesn't cause you to act like you're bewitched or be a witch or accuse people of witches. So it's not ergot poisoning.
Two things.
Yeah.
One, do you think that some of those convulsions were fake or like hyped up for sure? And two, an orb just went behind your head from like your calendar.
Why
out.
does this keep happening to me?
I don't know, because your house is fucking haunted.
Honestly, because right next to my calendar, I'm just going to show this to you real quick.
Oh, God.
When I worked at the state park in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, you told me the newspaper. Maybe that's where all of your orbs keep coming from.
I always want to talk about it, so I leave it there to remember. There's literally a picture of a dead guy on it.
Yeah, maybe that's where your orbs keep coming
from. So maybe
I
should put that down.
Maybe you should put that in a safe place with crystals and love and talk about it then.
Yeah, and like give it a proper burial or something.
Sorry, as soon as you said that, that's why I was like...
Yeah. So another thing that historians looked into is, based on research all over the world, not just in Salem, literally everywhere from around that time, like in the 1600s period, when, before science was a big deal, when everything was heavily religious based, all around the world, children would have convulsions, quote unquote, and blame it on witchcraft when they lived in extremely religious households. They weren't convulsions, they were tantrums. These kids were fucking sheltered
Over
and
the
annoyed
shit.
and bored as fuck and were like, let me do something crazy.
Yeah.
And that's a really big belief as a reasoning, because
I love that. Like,
when the
not for those
girls,
kids, but as a theory.
right, when the afflicted, meaning the ones accusing because they keep having convulsions, when those girls were like asking, like, people were coming from out of town asking them, hey, will you help me find the witch? They felt so important and like, you want my help? First of all, I'm a woman. Second of all, I'm a child. You want my help with something? Yes, I will help you. Like, probably gonna lie about it, but you want me. I feel needed. Like, yeah. I love
That's where
this.
I don't, like, I blame the adults that were doing that bullshit, but not necessarily the kids. Because
I blame the adults of those kids who made the kids feel that they needed to do that.
Yeah, because kids will do that in any sense now. Like, if you want to play a game with them or you make something up with them, they feel important and they feel like empowered and they love that attention, and that doesn't make them bad kids. That just makes them kids. They want to feel wanted and like they're a part of something.
Yeah. Another huge, not necessarily reason, but factor in it is that at this time there was no distinction between church and state. Like, how dare you say that God said you need to be put to death? Like, I'm sorry, who?
Excuse me?
I don't know that person.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, that's fucking crazy. And then a lot of people blame this is just the populace gone mad. Like, it was just a crazy time that these crazy people just went crazy, and like, thank God we weren't there. But the scary thing is, like, these were smart people. These were educated people. These were wealthy people. This could happen today.
Now.
To any of us.
It's that mob mentality. It's like, okay, this is happening.
Yes,
like,
100% mob mentality, but also, like, it's what they believed. And they believed these superstitions. The scary thing to me is, in our bonus episode, we talked about how DNA can be wrong. We believe DNA.
Yeah.
What if one day someone is doing a podcast about, like, and these people thought that the DNA was right, so they kept killing people. Like, why are we still killing people, period?
Yeah.
We don't know.
I don't think that, and I mean, we've talked about that. There are just monsters out there that cannot be rehabilitated. We've talked about certain people that have been given the death penalty where we're like, kind of don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should have that power. Like,
yeah.
We just talked about power. Yeah.
We just talked about Giles Corey. Like, yeah, he was a racist. He was mad that natives were allowed to drink at a tavern. He was probably a murderer.
Kind of an asshole.
Beat someone to almost death and then they died.
Yeah.
But he still didn't deserve to be pressed to death.
No.
Like, that's... Nobody deserves it.
that. Yeah.
It's scary and, it's so creepy.
I agree. Unbelievable. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
By the way, I don't know if that was all you had, but...
Yeah, my last point is just the fact that, you know, even after this happened, like this was a very condensed area where it got out of hand, obviously. Yeah. But even after the witch trials, people are still accused of being a witch. People were still hanged for their crimes all the time. You know, it wasn't as talked about. It was in random parts of the world. It wasn't all in the same area.
It wasn't in a huge condensed, like...
Right.
Like, and 30 people at once, kind of
The
thing.
saddest part is it was always an outsider, a person who wasn't like, people of a different race, people of a different religion, people who were new to town, singled out for being new or poor, or, you know, they were bullied.
Or were a little bit more strong-minded for their time.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why I'm so quick to call myself a quote-unquote witch. Like, Jesse all the time is like, you're not a witch. Like, I get what you like. I get that you're into the nature. I get that you're into the divination. I get that you're into the stars. But you don't have to say you're a witch. And I'm like, I say I'm a witch because I stand with those people.
Yeah.
Like, those people who are on the outside all the time. Like, that's why I want to be considering myself a quote-unquote witch. Like, yes, I know it's a scary term, but I refuse to label it as something scary. I'd rather label myself as it than someone else as an insult.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a beautiful explanation of that, though, too. And it's like, This Is Weird. I think it's like This Is Weird or Keep It Weird podcast. Hold on. They both identify as witches. And it's like, yeah, they know necessarily that that's not, you know, maybe a physical, they can't practice magic in the same way we see on TV, but it's like the same thing. They like, you know, eating with the seasons and solstices and tarot cards and like things that give them meaning. So it's like, if people want to identify that way, let them fucking identify that way. I fall somewhere kind of in the middle where it's like, but I love your explanation of that as like a little bit of like a weirdo and
there's
outcast.
There's literally even literal Christians who call themselves Christian witches. Like, a witch isn't someone who believes in magic. It's just like, to me anyway, it's just a person who's like, I'm gonna do what I want to fucking do. Like, I'm gonna do a little weird to you.
Post, listeners, please engage with it. I will do like a "What is a witch to you" kind of post because I kind of like that. That's cool. Because I would say this, like Kevin's like, why do you have all this witchy stuff? He says that all the time, and I'm like, why is that a bad thing? Like,
when I was at my dad's house, I brought my tarot cards and my oracle cards, and I did readings for my
Were they okay with it? I guess it's not just
my family is fine. Yeah, my family's pretty progressive. But like I did it for my stepmom and her sister and her friend, and I was doing all these things, and my stepmom's sister was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you know how to do this. This is so cool. And my dad's like, it's because she's a witch, and like rolled his eyes, and she laughed, and I was like, I am a witch. I call myself that.
I mean, at least he's kind of leaning in.
Oh yeah, my dad he's a very like, you know, when Biden won, he lit a cigar that had Biden's face on it. Like, he celebrated. He's very progressive, but he's also
that's kind of witchy behavior in and of itself. Like. But you did an amazing job.
Thank
you.
Be
a fucking witch.
Yes, if you
let us
are
know what you want.
More deeply interested, definitely check out Aaron Mahnke's Unobscured Season 1. Oh my god, it had so much, like, the whole way to Cincinnati I was listening to this. It has so much freaking information.
That's cool. Like, so, like, even when you say interviews, was it, like, family interviews? Or descendants, or people that lived in the area?
I don't know if it's definitely people who live in the area, but I don't know if any of them are specifically related. They're all historians though, and so one of the scariest things, scary, also interesting, also like be on the lookout kind of thing, is a lot of information is new. Like every year more stuff is found about this time, because after, you know, they changed their name to Danvers and realized that what they did was fucking awful, they kind of hid the fact that the Salem Witch Trials happened. In the episode, he said that 7 witches, quote unquote witches, who were accused were not exonerated until 2001.
Fuck off. Seriously?
2001. Yeah, because, well, first of all, a lot of people didn't even know they were accused. But yeah, when they finally found out, they're like, oh my god, I can't believe this. Like, those people's families lived with that for so long. So, like, hundreds of years. Yeah. So, like, if you live in that area, if you might be distantly related to any of those witches or any of the accusers, like, check. You know, a lot of times a family member will die, and then someone will inherit their stuff, and they go through it, and they're like, oh my god, these are like court papers from the witch trials. Like, holy shit, like, a historian needs this. And so these are those historians being interviewed. Like, yeah, we recently found out that this happened or that happened. And it's crazy. They're literally trying to erase that part of history. And the problem with erasing history is if you erase it, you will do it again. Like, we need to know about these
History
things
has
so
a
we
really
don't
toxic
repeat
habit
it.
of repeating it.
Yeah.
Took the words right out of my mouth, of repeating
Yeah.
itself.
That's why we put up, like, statues of, Martin Luther King Jr. and stuff, because we need to remember what he fought for so that we don't fuck that up again.
100%.
Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's scary.
You did an amazing job, because I know
Thank
how
you.
much information that there is on
I
the
had
Salem Witch
16
Trials.
pages of notes before
And what
this.
did you condense it back down to?
10.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
Sarah is still our hero.
Yes.
And our rest in peace to all of these amazing misunderstood people that lost their lives to
Men and women. And shout out to the men who stood by their wives, because
absolutely,
even in 2022, that's rare.
100%.
Men who literally died for their wives.
Kind of romantic. I kind of
Yeah.
love it. But yeah, it's like, what? I'm gonna make a scene and I'm gonna be hanged for it? Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, not right. But I don't know how you're gonna end this episode. Is there something good that happened on this day?
There is, actually. Forgot. I was like, how do I end this?
Because I'm gonna stage my bedroom.
Yeah, so let me tell you what happened on this day, because I did find something extremely interesting. Actually, I think the really interesting things for next week, but there's something interesting today too. Where is
I kind of love it that you have like all of these things. You're like, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't get to know until it actually be recorded.
Oh, it is today's.
Okay.
Ooh, I'm so excited. Okay.
Okay.
On this day in 2017. Oh, okay. Hang on. By the way, today is July 5th.
Yes.
On this day in 2017,
Holy
the courts,
shit. Sorry.
yeah, not that long ago, courts ruled that the body of Ashutosh Maharajji would be allowed to stay kept in a freezer just in case he comes back to life.
Excuse me?
So
is that what you were hoping my reaction was?
yeah, actually. Ashutosh was the spiritual leader of the Socio-Spiritual Society / non-governmental organization in India. Probably a cult, but not that much information. This is an organization in India called Divya Jyoti Jagriti Sansthan, which Ashutosh founded in 1983. It's very yoga-centered. It's very happiness. I love the music. I was looking at all of their YouTube videos today. I might be in a cult now. It was awesome. It's amazing. But anyway.
Whatever. The music you've introduced me to has been incredible, so please send it my way.
Yeah. DJJS. DJJS. Google it or YouTube it.
Is that for the music or?
That's for their yoga videos and stuff will come up.
Oh,
on
I
YouTube.
love that. Okay.
And it has music to go along with it, and I love it. Anyway, Ashutosh was declared deceased by a team of medical doctors after having a heart attack on January 29th, 2014. But his followers believed that he was just in a deep state of meditation and might come out of it someday. They fought and eventually won the rights to keep his body in the freezer in 2017, just in case. You never know. How fucking crazy
I
is
would
that?
like to be kept in a freezer just in case I wake up one day. You never know.
Just in case, you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
And we love you guys lots. Thank you so much as per usual. We will see you next week for your regular episode. And in the meantime,
Keep it twisted.
Thank you for listening to Twisted and Uncorked podcast. Remember to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. You can also check out all of our sources and materials, as well as photos for the episode, on our website at twistedanduncorked.com. And you can follow us on social media at Twisted and Uncorked or Twisted_pod on Twitter. Thank you so much for all of your love and support, and we will see you next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Cheers!